Good morning, gladiators. It's Tuesday, February 2nd, so let's get started. Today, we will be learning about the timeline of Russia, basically, learning about how they went from a, I guess you'd say, unlimited government to obviously a dictatorship, working their way up to a presidential democracy. But we're going to learn about how is it that they got to a place where it was so dark, where the people were being mistreated. The goal today is to figure out or understand what the importance is of having a limited government. How does that benefit the people of that country? How does it benefit not only the people of the country but the country in a whole, where they're able to work with other countries, right? Do they have a peace agreement? Is there a peace treaty? So let's talk a little bit about that. But today we want to learn about how did they get there. The next 4 days we're going to walk through the process of the rise and fall of Russia's government, where they are today, and we're going to compare that to the lesson for today and tomorrow. Has it really changed? Is there something that they're doing? Is there something that Putin is doing that kind of resembles that autocratic government, right? So let's talk about that. All right, so for today, you're going to watch this video, The Rise of the Soviet Union. I want you to stop it at 3:31. And the reason is because this video starts to advertise their videos. So just stop it at 3:31 so you don't have to listen to it. Okay? Today, we're going to compare and contrast Stalin's government versus Hitler's government. Why is it that in social studies, or at least junior high, we don't talk much about Stalin? It's a quick overview, but the students come in knowing so much about Hitler, right? They learn that in elementary. They come in having an idea about what Hitler did and what his government was like. Stalin was almost the same way, but probably a bigger monster. At least Hitler put on the face that he was there to attack others, where Stalin acted like he wasn't. He acted like he was working with other governments. In reality, he was not. So let's talk about him. All right. So let's see. I'm going to open this up. Today's objectives is be able to identify reasons for limiting the power of government, so I can develop an understanding why a leader in a limited government is not above the law. I know I have it when I can openly discuss with family, friends, and classmates why the Constitution protects the people in a country with a democratic government. So, again, we're going to compare and contrast Stalin versus Hitler, but also always bring it back to a limited government, the United States. We're constantly going to be comparing that. All right, so what I want you to do is let's look at this map. The first thing you should always do is read the label, read the title, Russia population. Here you'll notice the next thing you should do is look at your key. The question is asking, what are the most populated regions in Russia? So we'll see that a lot of the population is sitting here. But why? Why is that? Why is it more populated in the west than it would be on the east? Perhaps are there regions, physical boundaries that are in the way, or is it the history? So let's learn a little bit about that the next few days. We're going to discuss that today. So, I think it might be easier to bring it as a PowerPoint because it covers up the letters. So today, when you are reviewing this, I want you to open it up as a slide, as a presentation. Okay, let me go to enable content and let's view it. I guess our current slide, and I'll go from here. All right, so World War One. They fought with the Allies against the Central Powers. About 3.7 million people died. There were severe food shortages, and people overthrew the Tsar, the Russian Emperor, and the Bolsheviks took over. This is the radical Russian communist group. This is really where it all stems from, where that question comes in. Are they trying to be a lot more like today? Are they trying to be like it was then? And we will compare and contrast, and we'll talk about that in class today. So in 1922, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which we call the USSR or the Soviet Union, took over. 15 countries with Vladimir Lenin as the leader. And then Joseph Stalin took over when Lenin died. So Lenin was a monster, but Stalin was probably the worst. A very horrible man. The things that he did to his people was just ridiculous. All right, so here's a picture of Lenin and here's a picture of Stalin. Again, just looking at the picture, he doesn't look like a mean man, right? It's where don't ever judge a book by its cover. And even with him working with the United States for a long time, he was an ally, or at least led us to believe that he was. And in reality, he was not. So we will talk about that the next few days. All right, so here is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So you could see, remember that first map that we were looking at? You could see how much they actually had. They had a lot of it. And after the Berlin Wall, obviously it broke, but we will talk about that on day 3 in our lesson, I believe. We'll talk more about that. But we have talked about the Berlin Wall. All right, so communism, just as a recap, government owns all property and controls all aspects of life. What kind of economy do you think they had? Probably a command, right? A command economy, because if they are controlling everything, they have a command. I command you to do what I say, right? And one way of remembering it, COMM, COMM, they go together. Communism, command. This always is the way I would remember it when I was younger. Try to create something that's going to help you recall that memory of how those two go hand in hand. The government owned all several businesses, told people what to make and how much to charge. We've learned about that on certain particular days. There are governments out there that tell you what to charge, tell you what you're going to sell. And why is that? It's because the majority of the money goes back to the government. The government needs to know exactly how much they're expecting to get in return. So we've talked about that. This is basically an auditing process. It's something that they control, that they're able to know what their funds are going to look like that day. They strictly control the people. Anybody that speaks against them will be jailed, exiled, or possibly even killed. Millions were sent to gulags. A gulag is a Soviet labor camp, often located in Siberia. We've learned that in Siberia, when we talked about it, it's super cold, right? So, of course, they're going to take them to a very brutal place, somewhere where it's unbearable to live, unbearable to work, because of the climate. If you look at this picture, you will notice all of these in red. Those are your gulags. That is how many they had. It's an abundance of them. So a gulag, they would provide you with very little food, inadequate clothing. Keep in mind, they were in Siberia, very cold. It was overcrowded. Of course, when it's overcrowded and people are not clean, then you're starting to not only starve, but now you're dealing with diseases, right? Because of hygiene, possibly scabies or smallpox, things like that. They were poorly insulated housing. Why is that? To make them suffer, because they're in Siberia, right? It's cold. They wanted them to suffer. Here comes the poor hygiene that I was talking about. It's very important if you have a crowded group, if you have a lot of people in that group, hygiene is extremely important, because it avoids the disease. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it would happen if the hygiene is bad. Inadequate health care. If they were sick, if they were suffering, if they were starving, they weren't taken care of. Physical labor, cutting down trees, mining. Escape was futile. If they try to escape, it was pretty bad for them. This is the entrance to a gulag. As you can see, there's pictures of the USSR. This is what they slept in, basically just wood. As you can see, there's not really anything to cover themselves with. If they try to escape, they had watchtowers. This is a picture of what they did on a daily. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. All right, so here's Joseph Stalin. So Joseph Stalin, one of his famous quotes is, "Death solves all problems. No person, No problem. So he was responsible for an estimated 20 to 43 million. I would say 43 million is probably a good amount of deaths during his time as the leader of the Communist Party. What I want you to do is you're going to watch his biography of Joseph Stalin. It's a short video, but just to give you an idea about who he was. Then in World War II, they fought with us against Germany and Japan. This is where I was telling you that he led us to believe that he was a good guy, right? Total population in 1939 was 168 million. Military deaths 10.7. Civilian deaths and crimes against punishment of crimes against humanity 14.6. Total deaths was 23.4 million, and deaths as a percentage of 1939 population was 13.88%. That's very high. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I know I went pretty fast on that, but we'll talk about that. All right, so as a class, we're going to discuss why do you think we hear so much more about Hitler than we do Stalin? Possible reasons. Stalin was technically on our side during World War II, right? He led us to believe he was at peace with us. American forces never went into Russia, so we couldn't take pictures of what was happening like we did in Germany, right? With the concentration camps, there was proof of what was happening. And the Holocaust focused on an entire race of people just because of their race, whereas Stalin focused more on the political enemies. Anybody that was against him was his enemy. And Holocaust was well documented, but Stalin tried to keep his murders under wraps. Okay, I know that's a lot to grasp here, but I will go very slow in class today. We will discuss it. Again, this is a 4-day lesson. We're going to just build our way up from the rise to the fall to the current. All right. And then so for today, you will have this Russia government activity. It does go to the PowerPoint. And what you're going to do is you're going to analyze the map. You're going to answer the multiple choice, true, false, and a drag and drop. All right. Okay, my angels, that's it. I will see you in a bit.